All right, so we have here the first go kart that you can call built or restored. It is a Manco American Express. Um, I believe it was like made like the 90s. And this one, like I said, was the first one that I built or restored. When I first got it, it was nothing but two front wheels, steering wheel, no seat, no engine, didn't have an axle, anything like that. Front two wheels, steering wheel, that was it in frame. I actually talked the guy didn't even want to sell me the front two wheels that were on it. I had to talk him into selling me the front two wheels with it. He wanted like an extra $10, and I was already gonna pay him what he wanted for it. And in hindsight, knowing more now, I paid way too much for this frame because it needed a lot of work. Um, when I first got it, it was like a light blue and purple, like two tone, which I'll put the pictures of it before um, when I got it. And so originally, the reason I got the frame is because I had a engine. I still have the engine. It's a 5 horsepower flathead Briggs that I pulled off of another go kart that one of my grandfather's friends had on his go kart because they were getting rid of all their go karts or stuff like that. So I took that engine off of that one and didn't know if it ran or anything like that. But like I have an engine, so now I need something to put it on. So that's when I got on Facebook Marketplace and I really wanted this style frame. I remember it was one I tried to buy even before this one, and the guy ended up selling it. And it had more to it than this. I believe it had front wheels, it had an axle and all that type of stuff. But the guy ended up selling it before I can get it. So I found this one. And um, when I got it, I completely redid it. But I really want this frame because watching Cars and Cameras, they did an American Express build, and I really, really liked the way that go kart looked and how they did it. So I was like, that's the frame I want. I'm gonna find one, and I found one, and so I had to get it. And then kind of going off because they watching their channel, they I learned a lot because that's pretty much how I learned. YouTube, researching my own questions about go karts because I didn't know anything about go karts. I learned a lot building this one, and I'll explain some things that I messed up not knowing. I didn't know anything, and so it taught me a lot. First thing that I learned was the difference in chain size. I didn't know there was a difference in chain size. I thought all chain was the same, um, which it definitely is not. So when I ordered the axle, and all the things that go with the axle, like the sprocket and the sprocket hub and the all of that. The original sprocket that I bought for it was a 62 sprocket, but it was for 420 chain. And the clutch that I bought for the Briggs and Stratton engine was a 35 chain clutch. So, and I bought 35 chain. So when I went to go put it on, chain didn't fit. So it didn't fit on the sprocket because the sprocket is a bigger diameter. So I ended up having to buy 420 chain, and I bought a clutch that fit 420 chain instead of just buying a different a different sprocket which fit for 35 chain. I went the opposite way. Again, learning. I didn't know. um, I was just trial and error. There's a lot of trial and error with this. So eventually I got it all figured out. I'm like, okay, this fits cool. um, got the engine on after redoing it, stripping the paint, the old paint off, and repainting it. And when I was stripping it down, it still had the American Express decal on it underneath the paint, and I liked the way it was like weathered, so I wanted to keep it that way, and just taped it off and painted it black. And so yeah, had the engine on. Um, I knew I wanted race style rims to go on it, and so I ended up going back to Facebook Marketplace. I found a deal from people selling it. They had a bunch of rims, and they also had sidebars for race go karts, as well as the bumpers and even a few front pieces that went on race go karts, and the plastic front fairings like this one. And I really only wanted the wheels because that's all I was interested in. But the deal was a bundle deal. They're like, no, we want to sell everything. So, and all of that together was $80. And I don't even remember how many sets of rims I got in that. It was a lot of them. And I was like, well, I got plenty to choose from. So, because the reason why, which I have pictures of it, this rim is black and these other rims are not, is because that black rim was the same height and as the front one. So I'm like, well, and all the rest of them that were like this weren't the same height. So I was like, well, those two are the same height, so I'm gonna do that. And that's why one of the rims is black and all the rest of them are different. And so I kind of thought that, tried to make it a trend of mine, having one wheel a different color and the rest of them whatever. But anyway, um so that's kind of like the backstory as to why one wheel is black and the other one is not. um but when I finally got the rims, I bought back tires for them. The back tires fit perfectly fine for the diameter, for the width, I'm sorry, for the width of them. And the front tires that I originally bought for these front wheels were too small. I didn't know anything about the width and all that type of stuff at the time. So when I put them on and I looked at them like, I don't think this is gonna work. And so I even took those rims and tires to like a few like tire shops or even like a lawnmower shop, see if they could do something. They were like, yeah, these I can't. They like, we can't make that work. So I was like, okay. So I was like, I'm gonna have to spend some more money. So I bought wider tires, and they work. Um, Again, trial and error. Um, to get these wheels to fit the hubs, because the hubs that are on these wheels are American style hubs. The hubs that were made for these were metric style. These wheels were metric bolt pattern, but me not knowing what I was doing, I had the American style hubs for the front and back, and they didn't fit. So I was already didn't have enough money to go buy new hubs, and when I bought this, it was 2020, so money was a little rough. Um, but I had enough to go buy a little carbide bit, put the carbide bit in the Dremel, and I dremeled out the center of all these wheels and all of the bolt holes for the studs for the hubs so I could make them fit. So I dremeled out all of them and made them fit to the hubs. So now these, what you can consider, they're converted to American style hubs, even though they were metric bolt patterns. So yeah, in hindsight, did I kind of ruin the rims? Maybe, but I had to do what I had to do and make it work. So the little carbide bit was cheaper than buying brand new hubs for it. And I didn't even know there was a difference between American and metric style bolt patterns. I didn't know. Learned my lesson on that one. And I knew for the next time when I built one that I was like, okay, we're not doing that again. There has to be some type of a solution. And that's when I was like, okay, metric style hubs fit on metric style wheels because of the pattern. Bam. Um, so that did that, learned that. Um, Even I think one time I tried to take one of these off because I wanted to see some other wheels on here, and I realized I'm like, oh, I did do that to these, and they didn't. Yeah, they work. I made it work. Um, That's how that went about. Um, Going back to the Briggs that was on here, I bought the billet flywheel. I bought a billet rod. I didn't buy a cam because cams for those brand new were like $120, and I didn't see the point in paying that much for a cam when I could buy a Predator, or which was around that price, and it was more horsepower and it was newer compared to just buying a cam for that engine. So I I left those parts. I had the flywheel and the rod. I even bought valve springs. That even 18-pound valve springs for that engine, and I bought a Nibby carburetor. The carburetor, I believe, is a 24 millimeter. Um, I had all that sitting aside. I didn't build that engine. I had those parts like laying around for like a year. I think the Nibby carburetor was afterwards, but the rod and the flywheel and the springs, all that had been sitting for a year until I built up the courage to actually build that engine. But by that time, the Tillotson was already on this go kart because I wanted more power. Um, the Briggs was cool for the time when I was learning and all that. It was fun, but I needed more power. So the Tillotson that's on here is a completely stock Tillotson. It doesn't have um, a rod, flywheel, cam, anything like that. The only thing it has on is a stage one kit. That's the header, air filter, and the bigger jet and the carburetor. And the only other things that I've done to it, it has an E3 spark plug, and I zip tie the governor. That's it. Other than that, it's completely stock. The clutch on the engine is a 12-tooth clutch. The sprocket on the axle is a 54 35 chain. Um, and it's fun. I did plan on eventually building this engine, doing a flywheel cam and rod, but I was nervous about it. And that's just what it was. Even though I built the Briggs, but I was nervous about building this engine because I didn't want to mess it up. And so I left it stock, and I've been stock and everything like that. And I do plan on building it one day, but I I would like for this car to be faster, but I don't think this is really the frame for it to be really fast. Like where it is now is pretty good. It could always be faster, but handling wise, it doesn't handle all that well around corners like the race cars that I have. So I plan on building the Tillotson that's on my other one, because that one, well, no, actually, I will eventually, but I'll build it one of these days. But that's besides the point. This one, stock, it's fun, it's reliable, it starts up, it it does what it needs to do, and that's all I really really wanted for it, is just to be reliable and to have fun. And this one really started my go-kart journey with building up and all of that type of stuff. This was not the first one I got though. This was the first one I built. The first one I got was from my grandfather, but we'll talk about that one in a later video. But yeah, other than that, story about it. I crashed this go-kart, I don't know how long ago, but I crashed because I lost a tie rod. I didn't realize that the nuts holding the tie rod tight to the tie rod ends, well, holding the tie rod on, were loose. They were all the way loose. And looking back on videos, like, how did this happen? Looking back in a picture, the nut that was holding the tie rod on to the end link was way away from it, so it wasn't tight at all. And I was going down this one straight street that we had, and I was going as fast as it could go, probably 38, 39 miles an hour, and lost the tie rod end, came off, and I lost steering. and I hit a rock, which that is crazy because the people's yard that I crashed in was a big open yard. There was nothing else in the yard, nothing but grass, nothing else to hit. But this random rock I hit. I hit this random rock because I lost steering. I couldn't stop right away. So when I hit the rock, all I remember is seeing sparks and dirt and leaves fly over me. And luckily, I didn't fall off. Like the car didn't flip or anything like that. Um, I landed flat. Go kart landed flat, and I just remember being really embarrassed that this happened and in this people's yard. Um, but when I finally got it back home after driving it home, having to hold the spindle and steer the spindle while steering the steering wheel, because I tried to find that tie rod. I don't know how many times even after that, never could find it. Um, but I bent up the front of the go kart, bent it all the way up, and luckily that was the only thing that bent. The rest of the frame was pretty. The rest of the frame was fine. Just that part was bent up, and I didn't have anything to straighten it back down, so I ended up having to cut the front and then like section it, bring it down, and then weld it back up to get it to sit where it was. But I kind of left a little bit of it messed up to as a reminder, like you need to make sure you check your nuts and bolts on whatever kind of vehicle that you're beating on or whatever, because I could have gotten hurt regardless. It was only 38, 39 miles an hour. I could have gotten hurt, and that definitely wouldn't have been good. So make sure you check your nuts and bolts on your carts. Be safe. Um, yeah, just do that because things like that can happen. And so yeah, that was a lesson learned. Could have gotten hurt. I didn't. Thankfully, I didn't. Um, got it all fixed up. But yeah, this go kart has taught me a lot. I put lights on it. Do the lights work right now? Not necessarily. I need to figure out the wiring, which that also taught me how to do wiring to lights and switches and batteries and all that type of stuff. And so I learned how to do that because of this go kart. This one was like the OG. This one is the one that started the builds, and started like the addiction to these. And so, so yeah. Other than that, it's a real simple build. I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, um, asked a lot of questions, did a lot of research, and it's what it is. It needs to be restored again after all the driving and donuts and dirt and grass and everything. But yeah, it does its thing. It's a really good go kart. So if you have any questions, concerns, comments, let me know. And yeah, peace.